The chandelier light fractured across the ballroom like shards of ice. 100 voices hummed over champagne flutes and string music until a sudden crash cut the night in half. A white-gloved hand shoved a cake forward. The cream exploded across her face, thick, wet, humiliating. Frosting dripped down her collarbone, staining the silk of her white gown. The room froze for a heartbeat, then erupted. Laughter, pointing fingers. A single voice, sharp and rehearsed. "Eat white cake, hide black." The hostess in the scarlet dress leaned back, clutching her stomach with laughter. Guests joined in, some out of cruelty, some out of nervous obedience. A ripple of amusement swept through the ballroom like a toxic wind. And there she stood, a black woman in white, silent, still, cake, dripping like war paint. She didn't raise a hand to strike back. She didn't shout. She simply blinked slowly, once, twice, and let the laughter wash over her without moving an inch. That stillness was louder than their applause. From the edge of the room, a young guest whispered to his phone, camera tilted low. "This is insane. Are they serious right now?" His live stream glowed red in the corner of the screen. The hostess sneered, voice ringing clear. "You don't belong at this table." The crowd echoed her cruelty in chuckles and muttered jokes. Someone clapped ironically. A man in a tux shook his head, smirking, "Security should have checked invitations better." But she remained upright, the smear of sugar on her face transforming into something else, an unspoken mask. She had worn masks before. At 16, denied entry to a hotel lobby. At 23, laughed at in a bank branch. At 32, mistaken for the assistant at her own board meeting. Each time, silence sharpened her. Tonight, it armored her. Her hands lowered to her sides. She did not reach for a napkin. She did not flinch when another guest muttered, "Cheap dress," under his breath. The hostess leaned in close, eyes glittering. "Go on, wipe it off. Everyone's watching." Everyone was. Phones tilted upward now. Some to mock, some to record, some unsure what they were about to witness. She inhaled slowly, chest steady, the kind of breath that signals the eye of a storm, and though the cake still clung to her face, her dignity stood untouched. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here. Now, back to her. Because in this ballroom, under crystal lights and cruel laughter, no one yet understood. The woman they were mocking held the keys to every dollar that kept their world spinning. And when she finally chose to speak, the gala would fall silent. The music stumbled back to life, violins scratching awkwardly as if trying to stitch the room together. But the silence around her still pulsed. A black woman in a white gown, frosting dripping down her cheek, standing in the middle of a ballroom where no one thought she belonged. She hadn't planned on being noticed. That was the point. Tonight wasn't about the spotlight. It was about watching, listening, measuring the character of the very people her fund had lifted onto this stage. Her name, unknown to most in that glittering room, was Maya Grant, 40 years old, founder of Horizon Equity Partners, the firm whose $4.2 billion endowment didn't just bankroll the gala, it bankrolled the very organizations these guests pretended to champion. But she hadn't arrived with an entourage. No photographers trailed her, no diamond necklace screaming wealth. Instead, she chose a simple gown, smooth fabric that caught no light, silver earrings small enough to disappear against her skin. She carried no clutch bag, only a phone slipped into her palm like an afterthought. To them, she was invisible, or worse, dismissible. And that was intentional, because Maya had seen this theater before. At 25, she'd attended her first investment conference in a second-hand suit. A receptionist mistook her for the catering staff and asked her to fetch more ice. She did fetch ice, then later signed the deal that saved the entire hotel from bankruptcy. At 33, she entered a boardroom to present a $600 million merger plan. A vice president slid his coffee cup toward her and whispered, "2 sugars." She gave him 2 sugars and then dismantled his position in the next hour with numbers he couldn't refute. Now, at 40, she entered this ballroom the same way she always had, unannounced, unguarded, testing the temperature of the room without revealing the fire she carried. The hostess never knew. The guests never guessed. To them, she was just another face that didn't fit the pattern of privilege. She stood there, cake melting onto polished marble, and not a single staff member offered her a napkin. Not a single organizer stepped forward to apologize. Their silence wasn't forgetfulness, it was choice. A young man in the corner lowered his phone briefly, whispering to his date. "Why aren't they helping her? That's the sponsors table." The date shook her head. "They think she crashed the party." Exactly. That was the mask she wore, an intruder. But beneath it sat the truth no one dared to imagine. This gala would not exist without her. The lights, the champagne, the polished silver trays, every cost tethered to her signature. And so she waited, still, silent, watching the people she'd lifted up reveal who they truly were when they thought she was beneath them. Because Maya knew, sometimes you don't learn a person's character by how they greet the powerful, but by how they treat the silent. Laughter never stays contained. It spread from one corner of the ballroom to another like champagne spilling unchecked. A man in a navy tux cupped his hands around his mouth and called out, "Someone slipped past security." A ripple of chuckles answered him. Another guest lifted his glass, toasting mockingly, "To party crashers, may they learn their place." The hostess in scarlet, the one who had delivered the cake, strutted back to her post with a smirk that stretched too wide. Her voice, pitched to carry, sliced through the chatter. "Don't worry, folks. We'll have her escorted out. This table's reserved for real patrons." No one corrected her. Not the servers holding silver trays. Not the musicians scratching their bows over strings. They looked away, as if silence could shield them from complicity. Then came the whispers, soft but sharp enough to pierce. "She doesn't belong here. Probably snuck in with catering. Look at her dress, it's plain. No designer would claim that." Each comment dropped like pebbles into water, sending ripples of humiliation outward. Phones tilted higher. Some recorded with cruel glee, others with nervous uncertainty, all of them witnesses to something ugly. A middle-aged woman near the bar leaned toward her companion. "Security should be here by now." Her companion nodded, eyes narrow. "Events like this can't afford a scene." The words swirled together, filling the air thicker than the scent of roses on every table. This wasn't mere laughter anymore. It was judgment, collective and unrestrained. Maya stood unmoving in the center, frosting sliding down the satin of her gown. Her silence wasn't emptiness, it was tension, the kind that stretches until even those laughing start to feel the edge of unease. From the back of the room, a server whispered to another, "She looks calm, too calm." The other shrugged, balancing a tray of crystal glasses. "Calm doesn't change the fact she's out of place." But not everyone echoed the cruelty. At the edge of the dance floor, a young woman in a teal dress crossed her arms tightly. Her lips parted as if to speak, but she bit down the words. Nearby, a college-aged man lifted his phone higher, whispering into the stream, "You're all watching this live. This isn't just rude, it's something worse." His comment section lit up in real time, disbelief flooding across screens miles away. The hostess's voice cut in again, dripping with arrogance. "Don't worry, everyone, we'll clean up this mess." She gestured at Maya as though pointing to a stain. "She won't be here much longer." A murmur of approval fluttered through the room. Then, two staff members in dark uniforms began making their way toward her. Not running, not rushing, just a steady walk, the kind that said they'd been summoned. The air shifted. The mockery hardened into expectation. The crowd leaned in, waiting to see her removed like an unwanted ornament. And still she stood, silent, composed, frosting on her gown, steel in her eyes. Because if they thought this was the peak of her humiliation, they hadn't yet understood they were only building the stage for their own downfall. The two staff members closed the distance, their polished shoes clicking against marble in an uneven rhythm. One carried a radio clipped to his belt, thumb already hovering near the button. The other held nothing, just the stiffness of someone convinced authority was his only shield. The room hushed again, waiting for the spectacle, waiting for her to crack. But Maya didn't move. She lifted a linen napkin from the table beside her, slow and deliberate. The fabric brushed against her skin as she wiped a streak of frosting from her cheek. She didn't scrub in shame. She dabbed precise, measured, as though she were preparing for the next course of the evening instead of erasing an insult. Every eye followed that napkin. It wasn't defiance in noise, but in quiet control. "Ma'am," one of the staff began, voice low but carrying, "you need to come with us." His tone lacked confidence, wobbling as if he expected resistance. Maya lowered the napkin, folded it neatly, and set it back on the table. She didn't speak, didn't argue. She simply looked at him, a gaze steady enough to make his throat tighten. That stillness wasn't unfamiliar. She had carried it before at 29, standing outside a bank as a teller locked the doors on her for arriving in jeans, accusing her of casing the building. At 36, when a junior partner laughed at her suggestion during a merger meeting, only to watch her idea save them millions 6 months later. Each time, she held her silence until it became unbearable for the other side. Now, in the ballroom, silence thickened like smoke. The staffer shifted his weight from one polished shoe to the other. The hostess in scarlet folded her arms, smirk widening. See? She knows she's guilty. Look at her, too scared to say a word. But it wasn't fear. It was patience. The young woman in teal clenched her fists tighter. Finally, she whispered, audible to no one but the man beside her, "Why isn't anyone stopping this?" The man answered without looking up from his phone, "Because they don't see her. They just see what they want to see." Maya blinked once, slowly, her eyes never leaving the staffers. The ballroom lights reflected in them, not shaken, not pleading, simply reflecting. The second staff member stepped closer, firmer now. "You're causing a disturbance. If you don't comply, we'll have to escalate." Maya exhaled, long and even. The kind of breath that says, "Do what you must. I am not moving." And in that moment, the balance of the room shifted ever so slightly. Laughter dimmed, whispers slowed. Because nothing unsettles arrogance more than the realization that its target refuses to break. The hostess's smile faltered for just a second. Then she laughed too loudly, trying to cover the crack. "Go ahead, escort her. She's wasting everyone's time." But time was already working against them. Because Maya's silence wasn't surrender, it was the countdown. From the far corner of the ballroom, a tiny red light blinked steady, a phone camera already live. A college-aged man in a gray blazer leaned against the column, voice low but intentional, as he narrated to thousands who couldn't taste the champagne or feel the tension in the air. "We're at the Rosemont Gala. They just threw cake at a black guest, and now security's moving in. Nobody's helping her." His comment feed rolled in waves. "This can't be real. Name and shame them. Stay live. Don't stop." Beside him, his friend angled her own phone higher. She whispered, "They don't even know who she is." Her voice trembled, not from doubt but from the weight of recognition. She'd seen Maya's face once in a magazine article about major endowments, but she wasn't ready to shout it aloud. Not yet. Across the dance floor, the young woman in teal finally stepped forward half a step. Not close enough to intervene, but enough that her movement broke the perfect stillness of bystanders. She bit her lip, then whispered toward Maya, "This isn't right." The words didn't carry far, but they carried. A waiter paused mid-stride, tray wobbling in his hand. He glanced at the scene, then at the phones raised around the room. His jaw tightened, but he kept walking, eyes down. Even he knew this wasn't going away quietly. The staffer with the radio cleared his throat, louder this time. "Ma'am, you need to come with us now." The words cracked under the weight of 100 witnesses, some in the room, many beyond it, all watching through glowing screens. Maya didn't answer. Her silence pressed against the walls, forcing others to speak for her. "That's enough," the man in the gray blazer said suddenly, his voice louder now, meant for the room instead of his stream. He lowered his phone just slightly. "You can't throw cake at someone and then call them the disturbance." Heads turned. The hostess in scarlet scoffed, "Mind your own business. She doesn't belong here." But the words no longer landed as cleanly. A murmur rippled through the crowd, fractured, unsure. Some eyes narrowed at the hostess now, not at Maya. The woman in teal finally spoke up, firmer. "She has a ticket. I saw her walk in with it." The staff hesitated. The hostess's face flushed, lips twitching. "Then where is it now?" she snapped. The teal dress woman's voice caught, softer but still steady. "You tore it. Everyone saw." Silence slammed into the ballroom. Not complete, but jagged phones buzzing, whispers scraping, the faint tremble of music trying and failing to mask the fracture. For the first time, the staffer with the radio looked uncertain. His thumb eased off the button, his partner shifted his weight uneasily. The live stream ticked higher. 10,000 viewers, then 20. Comments rained faster than champagne bubbles. The gala was no longer just a room, it was a stage. And on that stage, sides were beginning to form. Because dignity in silence has a strange gravity. It doesn't just hold itself, it pulls others closer until neutrality is no longer possible. The commotion drew new figures from the shadows of the ballroom. A man in a tailored black suit, clearly management, strode forward, jaw tight, eyes sharp with authority borrowed from his name tag. He didn't hesitate. "What's going on here?" His voice sliced through the chatter. The hostess wasted no time pointing at Maya, frosting still smeared across her gown. "She doesn't belong here. She crashed the event, tried to claim a VIP seat. Security was about to remove her." The manager's gaze swept over Maya with clinical disdain. He didn't ask for her name. He didn't ask for her ticket. He simply nodded once, decision already made. "Remove her," he ordered flatly. The crowd stirred. The woman in teal shook her head, speaking louder now. "She has every right to be here." But the manager's eyes flicked toward her like she was a child interrupting grown-ups. "And you are?" he asked, tone laced with dismissal. "A guest, just like her." The manager smirked. "Number not like her." The phrase landed heavy. Some gasped, others muttered agreement. Phones rose higher, capturing not just Maya's humiliation, but the arrogance solidifying in real time. Maya stood motionless, hands at her sides, chin lifted a fraction. She had seen this before. The certainty of men who believed authority was the same as truth. The manager gestured sharply at the staffer with the radio. "Call additional security. We're not playing games with fraud." "Fraud?" The word cracked out of the young man in the gray blazer, still streaming. "She's not committing fraud. You're humiliating her in front of everyone." "Enough," the manager barked, louder this time, his voice bouncing against crystal and marble. "If you don't want to be escorted out with her, keep your phone down." The threat lingered in the air, but the live stream stayed up. Tens of thousands now watching, comments firing. "Expose them. Stand your ground. She's powerful, I know that face." The hostess, emboldened by the manager, leaned closer to Maya, voice dripping venom. "Maybe you thought dressing up would fool someone, but money doesn't come wrapped in discount fabric." Laughter trickled again, though weaker this time. Maya didn't flinch. She let the insult hang, heavy and ugly, for everyone to hear. The second staffer stepped forward, hand half raised toward her arm. He didn't touch her, not yet, but the intention was there. The room inhaled as one, waiting for the moment of contact. And in that pause, something cracked not in her, but in them. Because the longer Maya stood silent, the more every insult sounded desperate. The manager growled to his radio. "Now, bring them in. She's leaving this room." Around the edges, more guests began to shift, whispering, recording, watching history bend. The humiliation was meant to crush her. Instead, it was crushing the very institution that thought it could erase her. The ballroom air snapped taut as the manager barked again into his radio. Seconds later, two more uniformed guards appeared at the double doors, shoulders squared, faces already hardened with the assumption of guilt. The crowd leaned in, eager for the climax they thought they were owed. The hostess wasted no time. She snatched the damp, crumpled remains of Maya's ticket from the table, a fragment that had survived the cake assault. With a theatrical flourish, she tore it in half, the sound sharp as a whip. "Counterfeit," she declared loudly, holding the scraps like evidence. "This is what scammers bring to events like ours." Gasps rippled, some genuine, others performative. A man near the bar clapped once, slow and sarcastic. "Call the police already," he shouted, drunk with arrogance. The manager obliged. He lifted his phone, dialed quickly, and spoke into it as if he were reading a script rehearsed too many times. "Yes, we have an unauthorized intruder at the Rosemont Gala, likely attempting fraud. Send officers." His voice carried, intentional, so every guest could hear. The young man in the gray blazer shook his head, speaking into his stream. "He just called the cops. On her. After throwing cake at her. Unbelievable." Comments poured across his screen. "Stay live." "Don't let them bury this. Name them all." "I know her face, that's Maya Grant." Meanwhile, one of the guards stepped forward, hand reaching for Maya's arm. He didn't hesitate the way the staffer had earlier. His grip hovered inches away from her silk sleeve. And still she didn't move. The woman in teal cried out suddenly, her voice cracking the room. "Don't touch her, she hasn't done anything!" Dozens of heads turned. The manager sneered, "You'll be next if you interfere." The hostess laughed coldly, cake still on her fingers. "Imagine thinking you could fake your way into our world. It's pathetic." The guard's hand finally landed on Maya's arm, firm, intending to pull. The room exhaled sharply. Phones shot higher, capturing the contact. the moment of physical escalation, but Maya's body remained rooted, like marble carved into the floor. She turned her head slowly toward the guard, her voice low, measured, and razor-sharp. "Take your hand off me." The simplicity of it stung. The command, soft but absolute, froze his grip mid-motion. The manager stepped closer, face flushed. "You are trespassing. Fraudulent entry. You'll leave here in handcuffs if necessary." Handcuffs. The word clanged against the chandelier glass. It wasn't just removal anymore, it was criminalization, a public branding of guilt. The crowd muttered, some gleeful, some uneasy. A few lowered their phones, suddenly wary of filming what might become evidence. Others doubled down, recording closer. The young man in gray repeated into his mic, voice trembling with fury. "They're threatening her with arrest for existing in this room." And in that moment, with frosting still dripping onto marble, with scraps of her ticket littering the floor, with hands tightening around her arm, Maya's silence became unbearable for them. Because the only thing more dangerous than a voice raised in protest is a voice that waits, patient, until the world leans in to listen. And tonight, the world was already listening. The guard's grip lingered on her arm, but Maya did not resist. Instead, she lifted her phone with her free hand, tapping the screen once. The ballroom's hush thickened as if the entire room leaned forward to eavesdrop. On the other end, a calm voice answered instantly. "Miss Grant?" Maya's tone was steady, unhurried, each syllable shaped like glass. "Initiate protocol. Freeze all transfers connected to the Rosemont Gala. Effective immediately." Ugh. The words slid through the ballroom like a blade hidden in silk. The hostess scoffed, rolling her eyes. "What? Calling your ride home?" Laughter rippled nervously, thinner this time, cracking under its own weight. But the phone voice didn't laugh. It responded with crisp precision. "Understood. All accounts flagged. Notifications dispatched to partner institutions. Estimated completion, 90 seconds. The guard holding her arm frowned, loosening his grip unconsciously. The manager blinked, confusion briefly breaking his mask. What did you just do?" he demanded. Maya turned her head toward him, her eyes steady. "You'll find out before the music stops." The violins faltered mid-note, as if obeying her cue. The young man in the gray blazer nearly shouted into his live stream. "She's pulling money! She's pulling the money right now!" His comments exploded. "Wait, Maya Grant? The philanthropist? No way that's her. Bro, she owns half the endowment here." The woman in teal straightened, her eyes wide with recognition. "I knew it," she whispered. But Maya hadn't raised her voice. She hadn't revealed her name. Not yet. All she had done was press a single command, and already the room felt different. The manager forced a laugh, brittle. "Nice bluff. You think a phone call makes you someone important? Security? Remove her now?" Yet neither guard moved. Their radios crackled softly, then fell silent. They exchanged a glance, uneasy. Maya lowered the phone slightly, but didn't end the call. She spoke again, calm enough to make the chandelier tremble. "Mark the time. Document every word spoken in this room. Forward directly to compliance." "Yes, Miss Grant," came the reply. The hostess stepped back, her bravado faltering for the first time. What compliance?" Maya's gaze cut through her. "The compliance that governs every dollar keeping these lights on." And suddenly, the laughter stopped. Not because anyone believed her yet, but because her stillness had shifted. She no longer looked like a guest trying to fit in. She looked like someone weighing the cost of the entire evening and finding it expendable. The manager tried again, louder, desperate. "You're bluffing. This gala isn't yours." Maya folded her phone against her chest, frosting still staining her gown, dignity shining sharper than diamond. "Then ask yourself," she said evenly, "why the ground just started shaking under your feet." The ballroom's hum fractured. Guests shifted uneasily, champagne flutes trembling in their hands. Phones caught every breath, every glare, every bead of sweat sliding down the manager's temple. Maya lifted her chin a fraction. For the first time, she let her voice carry not loud, not shouted, but sharpened to cut through crystal and chatter alike. "You've mistaken me for a guest," she began, steady as a metronome. "But I am not here to be entertained. I am the reason this gala exists." A silence swept the room, swift and brutal. The hostess laughed too quickly, brittle as glass. "Oh, please, that's ridiculous. You're nobody. This event is funded by Horizon Equity Partners," Maya interrupted, her words clean, final. My firm, my signature, my money. The manager's face drained, lips parting without sound. A murmur spread like wildfire, bouncing from table to table. Did she say Horizon? No, she can't be. That's Maya Grant. I've seen her photo in Forbes. The young man with the live stream nearly dropped his phone. He turned it to his own stunned face. You guys heard that, Maya? Grant. She owns this. She is the sponsor. His comment feed detonated hearts, fire emojis, disbelief flooding in real time. The woman in teal clasped her hands over her mouth, whispering into the air, I knew it. I knew it was her. Maya stepped forward once, just enough to command the center of the ballroom. Frosting still streaked across her gown, but it no longer looked like shame. It looked like war paint. You tore my ticket. You called me fraud. You summoned police to arrest the very person who paid for your uniforms, your wine, your stage. Her gaze locked on the manager until he faltered, stepping back instinctively. Her eyes shifted to the hostess, whose face had gone pale under the chandelier's glow. You shoved cake into the face of the woman who wrote the checks that keep you employed. Phones caught the words, hungry for them. Hashtags began to sprout online. Number Maya Grant, number Gala exposed. The manager tried one last weak defense. That's impossible. If you were the sponsor, you wouldn't come dressed like... His words trailed, too cowardly to finish. Maya's lips curved into the faintest shadow of a smile. Like what? Like myself? Gasps cut the air, and then she delivered the blow, crisp and undeniable. I am Maya Grant, founder and CEO of Horizon Equity. The $4.2 billion you toasted tonight was mine to give, and it is mine to take away. The words didn't echo, they detonated. The crowd's murmur became a roar. Some clapped, some gasped, some fumbled their phones as if the truth itself weighed too heavy. The guard stepped back, hands dropping from her arm. The manager swallowed hard, color draining from his face. The hostess stood frozen, crumbs of cake still clinging to her trembling fingers. In one breath, the powerless guest they tried to erase had become the architect of their downfall, and the night was no longer theirs, it was hers. The chandelier above seemed to dim, though its light hadn't changed. It was the room itself collapsing under the weight of realization. The manager staggered back a step, his polished shoes squeaking on marble. This can't be, he stammered, voice stripped of authority. The hostess in scarlet clutched her soiled hands against her dress, as if hiding the crumbs could erase the truth. Her smirk was gone, replaced by a trembling jaw. I didn't know, she whispered, eyes darting wildly, searching for escape. Guests whispered, no longer mocking but horrified. A man near the bar muttered, We laughed at her. The sponsor. We laughed. Another woman pressed her phone against her chest, cheeks flushed with shame. On the far side of the room, live stream numbers surged like fireworks, 50,000, 60, 70. Comments scrolled too fast to read. Justice, fire them. She owns the room. The young man in gray turned his camera back on Maya, voice cracking with awe. She just said it. Maya Grant, Horizon Equity. They tried to humiliate her and she owns everything here. His feed caught the collective gasp. The sea of stunned faces, the guards lowering their hands as if burned. The woman in teal, tears shining in her eyes, said it aloud for everyone. You tried to erase her, in her own house. The words spread like a contagion, in her own house. And suddenly, the laughter that had filled the gala minutes before was gone. What remained was silence, panic, and the sound of 1,000 reputations crumbling in real time. Because every guest, every staff member, every bystander now knew the joke was on them. Maya's phone still glowed in her hand. She didn't raise her voice, didn't need to. The silence in the ballroom bent itself around her every word. Caroline, she said into the receiver, tone calm, steady. Confirm withdrawal, effective immediately. The assistant's voice came back crisp, audible enough for nearby guests to hear. Yes, Miss Grant. $4, $2 billion in pledged funds will be recalled from all Gala accounts. Notification to partner organizations has already begun. Contracts frozen. The words detonated across the room louder than any orchestra. Gasps, shouts, muffled cries, chaos unraveling in designer gowns and polished shoes. The manager lunged forward, desperate. Wait, Miss Grant, you can't please, let's discuss this privately. She turned her gaze on him, sharp as a blade. You called me fraud. You summoned police to arrest the very woman paying your salary. Discussion ended the moment you tore my ticket. The hostess clasped her hands, stammering, It was a mistake. I didn't know. Maya didn't blink. Ignorance is not innocence. You spat on dignity in a room built on my name. Guests shifted uneasily, guilt spreading like a stain. Some clutched their phones tighter, capturing every second. Others lowered their heads, ashamed. The young man with the live stream turned his camera back on himself, eyes wide. She just pulled it. 4.2 billion, gone, live. His comments exploded in real time, history being made. She ended them. This is justice. The guards backed away entirely, radios silent. Their posture changed, not protectors of the gala, but bystanders to its implosion. Maya folded her phone shut, letting the silence crash down one final time. Then she spoke not to the staff, not even to the manager, but to the room itself. This gala ends tonight. Horizon Equity will no longer sponsor institutions that confuse arrogance for excellence. Consider every contract void, every partnership dissolved. Her words echoed against marble and glass, searing into the memory of everyone present. The manager collapsed into a chair, face gray. The hostess covered her mouth, trembling. Guests whispered frantically, reputations ruined, careers over, futures rewritten in the span of a breath. And at the center of it all stood Maya Grant, calm, unshaken, power unmasked. The room that had tried to expel her now belonged to her more completely than ever, because she hadn't shouted, she hadn't begged, she had simply acted. And with a single command, she ended an empire that had mocked her existence. The chandeliers still glittered above, but their glow no longer felt regal. It felt hollow, stripped bare by the silence swallowing the ballroom. Maya took one step forward, the sound of her heel on marble louder than the string quartet that had fallen mute. Dozens of eyes followed her, some ashamed, some fearful, some in awe. Every phone stayed raised, capturing the moment the evening turned from spectacle to reckoning. She looked toward the hostess in scarlet, now small, trembling, clutching at the hem of her dress. You thought humiliation was power, Maya said evenly. But power isn't in cruelty, it's in clarity. Her gaze shifted to the manager slumped in his chair, face ashen. You thought authority was the same as truth. It isn't. Authority crumbles when truth walks in. And then she turned her eyes to the entire room, guests, staff, guards, onlookers watching from their screens around the world. You laughed. You pointed. You whispered that I didn't belong. Tonight you learned what belonging means. It isn't fabric. It isn't champagne. It isn't a seat at a rented table. Belonging is ownership, and ownership is mine. The words didn't rise into a shout. They dropped like stones, each one heavy, irreversible. From the back, the woman in teal whispered fiercely, "Yes." Her voice cracked, but it was enough. Others followed murmurs, nods, reluctant claps that grew into an uneven chorus of recognition. Not applause for entertainment, but for truth, laid bare. The live stream surged again, 100,000, 200, more. Comment feeds turned into rivers of fire emojis and exclamation points, a headline already forming online. Maya Grant ends Rosemont Gala with a single call. Maya straightened her shoulders, frosting still staining her gown. She didn't wipe it away. She let it stay, a reminder carved into silk. She delivered her final words like the drop of a gavel. You called it cake. I call it clarity. Never mistake silence for weakness. For a moment, no one moved. The air itself seemed carved in stone. Then, slowly, she turned, walking toward the exit. Each step was steady, deliberate. The crowd parted without command, creating a path lined with downcast faces and trembling hands clutching useless champagne flutes. At the doors, she paused once, just long enough for every phone to catch her silhouette against the glittering lights. And then she was gone. Behind her, chaos bloomed, contracts dead, reputations burning, whispers spreading like wildfire into every corner of the city. But Maya Grant didn't look back. She didn't need to, because justice had already been served. Quiet, complete, unstoppable.